Hola a todos, yo soy Julieta Gómez, soy la directora del Festival Byte Footage. Les agradezco por unirse hoy a este link, a asistir a esta charla. Le agradezco también al Centro Cultural Kirchner por dar lugar a esto, por generar esta coproducción con nosotros. Nosotras seguimos el trabajo de Alexandra Pirici hace un tiempo ya y nos resulta muy interesante y relevante su manera de construir narrativas y producir obra, y creemos que es fundamental habilitar estos espacios para que se den este tipo de intercambios. En ese sentido, muchas gracias a Lorena también, que generó este temario y entabló la conversación con Alexandra. Espero que la disfruten y la encuentren tan enriquecedora como nosotras. Voy a presentar muy brevemente a Alexandra y a Lorena y ya les dejo con ellas. Alexandra Pirici es una artista con trayectoria en danza y coreografía que trabaja fuera de las disciplinas a través de diferentes medios. Su trabajo se ha exhibido en el Sculpture Project de Münster en el 2017, en el pabellón rumano de la Bienal de Venecia número 55, en el Museo Tate Modern de Londres y en el New Museum de Nueva York, entre otros. Su obra investiga los contextos museísticos, los marcos contextuales escénicos y el espacio público. Lorena Fernández es una artista disciplinar y docente de artes visuales y audiovisuales. Egresada de la NERC, realizó talleres y clínicas de arte contemporáneo, de fotografía, como también de jardinería, joyería, poesía, cerámica y canto. Su obra desarrolla en simultáneo líneas de distintas materialidades en base a la construcción de un cuerpo intenso con el cual explorar la relación entre las imágenes y el mundo. Con eso dicho, les dejo con ellas y recuerden que esta charla va a quedar publicada, así que la pueden compartir y ver todas las veces que quieran, y espero que puedan sumarse a las otras actividades y conversaciones del festival en los próximos días.
Bueno, primero decirles que estoy muy contenta y muy como entusiasmada, no sé si es la palabra, pero y nerviosa también porque tengamos la posibilidad de tener esta conversación con todos los problemas que puede tener una conversación en esta situación en particular, donde tal vez tenemos inconvenientes para terminar de entendernos y tenemos que ser traducidas, pero para mí es una oportunidad para hablar y pensar con alguien que me interesa un montón su trabajo, que es Alexandra. Estuve pensando un montón y le mandé algunos mails a Alexandra para ver cómo organizar la charla, o sea que no podía ser tan fluida como eventualmente quisiéramos, y terminé dándome cuenta de que como el lugar por el que podíamos ir tenía que ver, y también en relación al festival en el cual estamos haciendo esta conversación, tenía que ver con la posibilidad o no, o con la nueva forma que eventualmente adquieren los viajes, la idea del desplazamiento físico, ¿sí? Entonces, creo que vamos a tratar de hablar un poco de eso. Cuando me puse a investigar o a pensar un poco en esa idea de los viajes, y en realidad esto ocurre porque yo conozco el trabajo de Alejandra cuando realizo un viaje, literalmente no la conocía antes, entonces como hay algo de la obra de ella que quedó como unida a la idea del viaje, ¿sí? Y investigando un poco sobre los viajes y cómo podíamos hacer para hablar nosotras dos ahora, con la separación espaciotemporal y con esta imposibilidad de que yo viaje a donde está Alejandra, o que Alexandra venga a donde estoy yo ahora, me di cuenta de que tal vez lo que iba a pasar era como que básicamente íbamos a hacer alguna especie como de relatos de viajes o relatos de movimientos, y investigando un poco sobre eso, en relación por otros motivos, me doy cuenta de que puede ser que lo que pase tenga mucho que ver con los relatos de viajeros, ¿no? Esos libros que desde la Edad Media se fueron escribiendo para contarle a los otros y a las otras de qué se trataba el mundo, básicamente. Entonces, creo que de nuevo ahí se vuelve a unir esta posibilidad de que el viaje es la posibilidad de conocer a otra persona. Como el viaje es un viaje para estar en otra parte, conocerse, pero también conocer a otras personas. Hay un libro en particular que se llama El libro de las maravillas del mundo, o Los viajes de Juan de Mandeville, que es como muy parecido al libro de Marco Polo, de los viajes de Marco Polo. Es un libro del 1500 aproximadamente, donde encontré que la persona que lo editó, que lo imprimió en su momento, anónimo, ya anota al comienzo del libro que dice: resulta bien sabido que el contexto histórico y sobre todo el marco ideológico en el que se escribe un viaje condicionan en gran medida el ánimo y punto de vista de quienes lo emprenden. Entonces, creo que voy a hacer como un intento de poner en contexto los viajes, ¿sí? Como de preguntarme cómo es que viajé, cómo es, y preguntarle a Alexandra cómo son sus viajes, eventualmente, y qué pensamos de los futuros viajes, como de qué pensamos de la posibilidad de volver a movernos, ¿sí? El primer viaje del que voy a hablar es el viaje que yo realizo en 2017. En 2017 se produce una especie de alineación en el mundo en el campo del arte contemporáneo, que es que coinciden durante unos meses en Europa 3 eventos importantes, que son la Bienal de Venecia, que se hace cada 2 años, es una bienal, la Documenta en Kassel, que se hace cada 5, y Münster, que se hace cada 10 años. Entonces, es como una especie de viaje para ver una especie de constelación, ¿no? Como de pronto se puede viajar y ver todo esto junto, que es como la avanzada del arte contemporáneo. La persona que viaja, yo específicamente, me parece como importante aclarar, resulta complicado hacer ese viaje, básicamente porque viajar desde Argentina a Europa tiene un montón de problemas que son sobre todo estrictamente económicos, ¿sí? Entonces, me parecía como importante entender eso, que la persona que estaba viajando era una mujer, que viaja sola, que es de clase media, más o menos blanca, que es artista y docente de artistas, y que literalmente emprendo ese viaje en el medio de una situación como compartida a nivel país, postraumática fuerte, que es el cambio de un gobierno, ¿sí? En el 2017, hacía 1 año y medio, que teníamos un nuevo gobierno que literalmente había demostrado de que el país estaba fracturado como en 2 partes, y el lado del que yo había quedado en esa fractura era claramente el lado del gobierno anterior, que había perdido las elecciones. Entonces, esa salida del país realmente era una salida como muy deseada, era como, no quería estar donde estaba, eventualmente quería irme, ¿sí? Así que para poder emprender este viaje hago una serie de movimientos. Primero contacto a toda la gente, redoblo el trabajo para ganar más dinero. Contacto a mis amigos que viven en Europa, que se habían ido antes por algún motivo. Pido como una red de solidaridad que me sostenga, y sobre todo tomo deuda en un banco, pido un crédito. Era la segunda vez en mi vida que pedía un crédito en un banco. La primera había sido para realizar una muestra, lo cual es raro, pedir dinero para hacer una muestra y después pedir dinero para hacer un viaje en relación al arte contemporáneo. El contexto tenía que ver exactamente con estas medidas, digamos, había algo como que yo estaba tomando deuda, pero el país estaba tomando una deuda aún mucho mayor que la que yo estaba tomando, una deuda que no tenía precedentes en la historia de nuestro país. Y básicamente había, en ese momento, en el 2017, estaba la posibilidad para realizar estos viajes de que podías comprar dólares, cosa que en el gobierno anterior estaba sumamente restringida porque el país no tenía dólares, necesitaba esos dólares para producir. A los Cuando asume el nuevo gobierno, a los 6 días de asumir, el ministro de Hacienda de este nuevo gobierno, de derecha, neoliberal, en conferencia de prensa anuncia que todos los ciudadanos y ciudadanas de la Argentina, a partir de ese momento podíamos comprar hasta 2 millones de dólares por mes. Y esa era nuestra vuelta al mundo, la posibilidad de comprar hasta 2 millones de dólares por mes. Me parece importante tener esto en contexto, de la idea de un país donde de pronto aparece esta posibilidad. El lugar al que arribo, el continente al que voy a arribar, es un continente que está fuertemente presionado, literalmente sus fronteras están fuertemente presionadas porque tiene un problema tremendo en relación a la inmigración, y esa inmigración es principalmente de Asia y de África, y está en resonancia con lo que Europa literalmente hizo para que esas guerras ocurrieran en esos lugares, cómo intervino Europa, y está recibiendo como las consecuencias de esa migración. Entonces, para que nos hagamos una idea como de ese momento, porque creo que hay algo como de esta situación del coronavirus que es como que encapsuló el tiempo, ¿no? Pero Europa en ese momento, recordemos que la tragedia de Lampedusa había sido en el 2013, la foto del niño de origen sirio kurdo había sido en el 2015, en el 2017 literalmente el problema de la inmigración era el gran problema en Europa, y tengo como el recuerdo muy preciso de llegar a Madrid, a la casa de unas amigas que habían intentado durante 2 años quedarse a vivir en España y no lo habían conseguido, se estaban yendo. Llegar a Madrid y que en el ayuntamiento hubiera un cartel gigante que decía refugiados bienvenidos, bienvenidos los refugiados, lo cual era un poco raro, ¿no? Era como, bueno, no sé si creo tanto de que realmente somos tan bienvenidos o bienvenidas, o que son tan bienvenidos, porque yo no era una refugiada, pero claramente era muy fuerte la sensación de extranjería estando en Europa, ¿sí? En ese contexto, y sin saber bien con qué me iba a encontrar, porque obviamente nunca había ido a Munster y nunca había no tenía muchísimas noticias sobre el Sculpture Project, que es un evento mucho menos conocido que la Bienal de Venecia, o es más de culto, si se quiere. Voy a verlo porque me parece increíble que eventualmente algo se pueda preparar durante 10 años para el espacio público. Me parece que estaba como convencida de que algo iba a pasar ahí interesante. Y sobre todo voy como en cualquier viaje, voy buscando algo, y creo que lo que iba buscando específicamente era el trabajo de Pierre Huey, que sabía que iba a estar ahí, y creo que nada, lo primero que hice fue agarrar una bicicleta y ir en bicicleta para ver ese trabajo. Y después, preguntando, una de las personas que te ayudaban, como que te ayudaban en Munster, me comenta del trabajo de Alexandra y me dice, me lo muestra en el catálogo y me dice, creo que este trabajo está muy bien, es probable que te interese ir a verlo. Así que fui a verlo, y no quiero hablar, o sea, no quiero describir Leaking Territories, porque quiero dejarle esa parte a Alejandra, pero creo que lo que me impactó del trabajo fue que todo lo que estaba viendo, todos los problemas que eventualmente iban apareciendo a lo largo del viaje, el trabajo lograba concentrarlos, o sea, era de una complejidad muy alta, lograba darle como cuerpo y presencia a esos problemas, y a la vez era muy indescriptible la sensación de, vamos a ponerlo en estos términos, como era como difícil de describir la forma o dónde era que el trabajo impactaba. Yo no podía entender mucho si era que era la belleza de lo que estaba pasando, si eran los textos, si era la voz, si eran los cuerpos, si era lo inesperado, ¿sí? Que era como algo de todo eso se conjugaba y hacía que de pronto ese trabajo apareciera con una contundencia que yo no había visto hasta ese momento. Entonces, mi pregunta para Alejandra es, porque Alejandra tampoco era de ese país, cómo es el viaje que produce efectivamente ese trabajo. O sea, cómo se viaja para producir ese trabajo y qué consecuencias en la forma de moverse tiene ese trabajo. ¿Qué relación podríamos pensar entre ese trabajo y la idea de los territorios, ¿no? De atravesar los territorios en un viaje?
Okay, well, thank you so much for also the introduction into how you arrived to actually see the work, and it's a really beautiful contextualization of everything. Actually, I'm very, yeah, it's very nice to be able to discuss also work, but in such an expanded context. I want to go back a little bit to what you mentioned about travels and travelers, and how the historical and ideological framework somehow sets the purpose of the travel. And I think, you know, also with and I will come back to talking about digging territories as well, but I think this is also good to get back to, because I think today much of the, let's say, ecological liberal discourse is very much against flying, right? It's this other thing about green living and sustainability and so on. And in a way, I think this also becomes very much about a certain privileged Western Europe that is able to travel by train more or less everywhere within this enclosure where, you know, big galleries are, money moves around and so on. And for me, travel was literally always about, I think what you meant about what you were mentioning about knowing something about the other, meeting other people, getting to know things about others, and encountering other other contexts, other dynamics, other worlds. Also, of course, it's not about exoticizing, and I think maybe differences are less well ingrained today, but still for me it was, I really enjoy travel, and it's something that I'm missing a lot now, though I was able to travel, but only within Europe. But whenever I hear people saying I'm only going to travel, I will only travel where I can take the train to, well, I mean, at least take the boat, you know, at least be ready to take the boat. And I would be very ready to take boats and trains if only everything would not slow down, but go to a rhythm that is actually intelligent, you know, where you don't have to do 100 travels, but maybe you just do 4 per year, and you can take the boat and the train. But I think it's, travel is actually, it's probably the one thing that I now enjoy the most, or maybe even live for, to be honest. So this idea that you would isolate yourself in a pod and then just connect via screens is, I don't think this creates an image of a life worth living. And it's true that actually most of this discovery, also famous discovery travels, were actually colonial travels. So there was always this other thing there that was, you know, no matter how much botanists or naturalists or scientists were trying to, or were also fascinated by the new things they discovered, there was always this underlying colonial perspective that also always produced hierarchies. So I'm sure there is always some form of opening up also to something new. And there's always a cross-contamination, inevitably, which is also, I guess, this links also maybe to the question of migration and Europe and Fortress Europe. And then, so there's always a return of this flow of traveling, or of in inserting or in entering into other contexts. So that has a repercussion, and this returns to you. And however you enter and however you travel, what you put in there also returns, I think, which is, I think it's interesting to also think about. And yeah, I think with Münster, yes, I became very, very much interested in this concept of territory, but I don't think there was a particular moment where I thought what I thought about traveling and the work in Münster. I think, to be honest, the way it appeared, or the exhibition has this particular framework where the invited artists are supposed to connect to a place in the city. So you visit, you do several site visits, and you get to know the city. And I was very drawn to, but it connects to travel somehow. But I was very drawn to this space, which is the Friedensaal, this Hall of Peace in the City Hall, where this half of Westphalian peace treaty was signed, the Treaty of Münster. The other half was signed in Osnabrück. Anyway, this is irrelevant. I mean, not so relevant detail for now. And this treaty actually, it's a very significant moment in history, also very little known, but it basically, it has a great importance for the whole subsequent conceptualizing of the modern nation state and of territory as something that's supposed to have borders, and even this idea of non-interference in other states' territorial affairs. So this idea of state sovereignty was somehow introduced during these diplomatic negotiations in Münster. There are a lot of interesting things to be said about that particular war and that particular form of peacemaking. It was also apparently the first time that a war ended by diplomatic means. Also for economic reasons, it became too expensive to wage war. So it wasn't profitable anymore. So also interesting. This is what actually determined peace when war didn't bring profit. But somehow I started to think about this question of territory, and I think the work, or at least what I was trying to do with it, was also to say that there is no such thing as well delimited enclosures, that these are fictions. And this was, the modern nation state is also a fiction. It didn't exist until this point in time, actually, until 1684, I think. It's when the Westphalian Peace Treaty was signed, and this started to be, Europe also started to be partitioned in clearer formations. So territories are lines, are fictional lines of separation that we draw, but they don't really exist, and there's always a leakage. There's always something that leaks into another. So there's no clear separation. And I think the work does this a little bit. So it tries to collapse things and to amalgamate them into this one experience. On the other hand, I also thought about territory as something that is not only related to geographical horizontal space, but has to do with identity formation, which again, I think it has to do with, of course, nationalism, nations, states, where you belong to, how, also the question of migration. But I didn't want to treat it so obviously, let's say, though I think there's a very specific reference even to migration in the work. But so I was interested in the concept of territory as horizontal geographical space, also as identity, and also as body. So the body as a territory. And for example, the work begins with this, it functions in a loop, but let's say the beginning of a loop, or where I started was with this corner cluster of bodies that somehow unravels in the space, a bit like a wave, this very slow wave. And I really thought, because now since you're talking about the media in 2017, there was a lot of this also panic making, the panicked accounts, the wave of migrants. So there was this metaphor of the wave, which was being used as something frightening, the wave of bodies, which was also somehow disturbingly related to deaths on the sea, also in the Mediterranean. But I wanted to also maybe turn around this metaphor and to have this very slow, smooth wave of bodies that arrive in the space, and from there on, they start this constellation, or this linking of the current space and time that you share with the visitors to these other places, other moments in time, which are very, very far away or very near at the same time. Also very near. Yes, so I think in a way I wanted people to travel to these spaces and times, and through history, and also through their relationships with themselves. There's also a Google, like an embodiment of a Google search engine in the work, which was also referencing somehow this formation, the way online identity and profiling happens, and how the performers were also maybe profiling the audience. I mean, not maybe, they were definitely, they were supposed to do it. Sometimes maybe it was more obvious, sometimes less obvious, but they were supposed to profile the person asking or giving the search word for the human Google search engine, and somehow also reproduce some of the biases that are inherent to online profiling. For example, if, let's say, you could say, if a woman and a man would ask about the market, would search for the market, the man would get information about the stock market, and the woman would get information about vegetables. So just to also reproduce some of, they were meant to reproduce some of that bias, but also to offer sometimes very spontaneous and personal information, and to access their own, let's say, memory. So also to balance, let's say, this process of creating a hierarchy of information based on some more or less objective parameters. But anyway, so it was a lot about, I think it was a lot about travel, and it's very nice that you connected to it. I think travel, but in the sense of conjuring also, or like making things, bringing things into your imagination by speaking them out, by moving, by calling them, by referencing to them. And it's nice that you mentioned that. I also thought that it's a combination of body and sound, voice. We were working actually a lot with intonation, like how to deliver, because it's hard to work. We didn't want it to be theatrical, so it was not about, there was always this here we are, this one repetition of these 3 words, here we are, which was here we are, and then the performers would list the distance in space or in time to the event or the action or the object that they were embodying. And we wanted this sort of distancing also in how they conjured, let's say, these events or objects. And one thing we did, we were watching also, we went also by the lake and just spent time watching the water, like moving in this kind of very calm, undisturbed way. And also we watched the International Space Station quite a few times. So just this thing serving the Earth, you know, no matter what happens on the Earth, there was this very constant movement of the International Space Station. So in a way, because the situation actually implied embodiment and physical presence, I think also with the voice and the quality of the text and the delivery, and also somehow the quality of the movement, we wanted to give the sensation of something that contains this, or something that is not over, but that is, it takes some distance. It takes some distance from these events, because some of them are also quite charged, I think, and imbued with emotions. So for me, distance was also a way to maybe make them even more strong or impactful. I'm not sure that this answers somehow the questions, but I hope it's a good continuation to, or yes, somehow it feels like a good continuation to what you propose.
Yes. Pensé que no lo iba a hacer. I thought I will not going to do this, but I'm going to do this because tomorrow I wake up and I see the image again. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to share my screen. See? There is a lot of sound here in my house. There are some dogs fighting. So, sorry.
I know, it's very nice. Also saw a cat passing by at some point.
Yes, my cat.
It's lovely.
Yes, I love it. Creo que algo de lo que a mí me pasó en Leaking Territories es que como tengo una formación en imágenes, estuve trabajando durante mucho tiempo en base al trabajo de Avi Barbour, que trabaja con paneles, y que básicamente lo que hace es pensar cómo esas imágenes se cargan de tiempo, ¿sí? Como una carga temporal, que es la que les permite de alguna manera volver a la vida. La imagen de Barbour, el fresco de Ghirlandaio, es como una de las imágenes que él analiza, y es donde aparece como con mucha claridad de que es la idea del movimiento la que eventualmente hace aparecer el tiempo, ¿sí? Pero para que algo se mueva tiene que haber un espacio. Entonces es como la combinación de un espacio específico con la entrada de este movimiento, que es este es el movimiento que entra, ¿sí? Y esa es la carga de tiempo. Y en Leaking Territories era muy obvio de pronto eso, porque el espacio era un espacio netamente occidental, un espacio construido, digamos, en la forma de la perspectiva tradicional occidental, digamos, es como estaba, y de pronto los cuerpos, esta ola de la que vos hablás, literalmente traían como movimiento a ese espacio que estaba como grillado, ¿sí? Entonces, había algo como que para mí pasó con el trabajo, que es que me permitió entender físicamente algo que solo había entendido de manera intelectual, que lo había visto en la imagen y que lo había comprendido, pero que en Leaking Territories era posible de pasar por la experiencia, de entender el espacio y entrar en relación con esos cuerpos. Y creo que ahí el tema de la voz era absolutamente... el canto, la voz, van a un lugar muy poco detectable adentro de uno. Es como, realmente es como una especie de rapto, ¿no? Como te toma. Y las voces estaban intentando como trabajar con una especie de canon armónico. Era imposible sustraerse de eso, a pesar de la distancia que se mantenía. Para mí el trabajo fue muy importante por eso, porque me permitió entender físicamente lo que había visto. ¿Sí? O sea, era como una experiencia del orden físico.
Can I, or yeah, I just wanted to maybe say a couple of things. I think I understand also better from your Spanish, Lore. There's more information actually. I think you also mentioned something about sound, yes. Right? And the voice and this singing.
And the canon of the voice. The way that the voice modulates in the space was, I was, I don't know, standing here, but the voice comes from out there. So I was surrounded. The voice called me every time. Like,
we also worked with that actually, with also, I think what I used to say was that you take the sounds for a walk in the space, or you try to surround. And I think the performers also move quite a lot in the space. And talking about sound and voice and space, I was also using this polyphonic structure. It was made also a little bit like a palindrome. And I used English, Kurdish, and Chinese Mandarin. So the performers sing in all these three languages, and somehow they're supposed to intertwine or to work well sound-wise. Of course, also in terms of meaning, it was, it made sense. Mm-hmm. But I was also interested in polyphony because, again, it's the kind of, let's say, music that has mostly disappeared from popular Western music, especially with modernity. So this intermingling, meandering, melodic melodies are now unusual for the Western ear, and it kind of, I mean, I think it was mostly used in fugues, or Bach, right? Or so somehow with modernity, or with Western modernity, this sort of combined multiple plural harmony became quite unusual for the year. So I just wanted to mention that. I guess, I mean, this was also part of of the tools with which I hoped you would be drawn into
Yes,
this
and
space. Like,
the sound give me a body. It's crazy for me because I work with images, but what sound would give me a body? It was truly an amazing thing. And I sing, and but I don't know how to read music, but I sing. And I learned from memory. I have the partitures, but I learn from memory. So every time I hear somebody, this was, okay, this is the form, okay, it was very an empathic way to going through the text, which was very complex. So it was como, you're very clever. It's very enchanting, you know? I entered there and I just can't go out. It's como, I want to stay here. What's yours?
That's nice.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go to another trip if you want. The second trip I want to talk with Alexandra is a trip that que pasó entre el 30 y el 31 de mayo del 2020 y lo realizan dos astronautas. En esta como catalogación que hice puse, bueno, ¿quiénes viajan? En este caso son dos astronautas, que son Douglas Hurley y Robert Behnken. ¿De qué país parten? Salen de Estados Unidos de Norteamérica, gobernados de 2015 por Donald Trump, el presidente republicano. Para el 30 de mayo, que es el momento en el que salen, Estados Unidos tenía 1,77 millones de casos y tenía 103.781 muertos para el 30. Y creo que tal vez el dato fundamental para mí de partida, digamos, como de inicio, es que el 25 de mayo del 2020 George Floyd había sido asesinado por fuerzas policiales y que literalmente para el 30 en el país estaba habiendo una serie de revueltas en torno a lo que implicaba el asesinato de un hombre negro indefenso por parte de la policía. ¿Sí? Entonces, ese es el contexto de partida de este viaje en particular. El lugar al que arriban es una estación espacial internacional y el viaje en sí, acá es como muy... lo que me interesa específicamente de las condiciones que posibilitan este viaje es que es el primer proyecto conjunto de la NASA con SpaceX, la empresa de Elon Musk, que es un señor con mucho dinero, en principio. La cápsula que transporta a estos dos astronautas es una cápsula que se llama Crew Dragon y se lanza con un cohete que es reutilizable. Y lo que me interesa del proyecto en sí es que, lo que me parece sumamente importante del proyecto en sí, es que es la primera vez que la NASA trabaja con componentes privados, esto es, pone a dos empresas, el gobierno de Estados Unidos permite a dos empresas hacer el desarrollo tecnológico de esto. SpaceX es el primero que lo consigue, y entonces es el sector privado, efectivamente, el que de alguna manera está llevando adelante esto. Las ganancias para el sector privado, en principio, es que una vez que esto ocurre y que se ocurre exitosamente, queda habilitado para realizar viajes al espacio exterior para hacer turismo espacial, básicamente, con capitales privados. Y me parece como importante tener en cuenta de que hay como una especie de unión entre estos intereses privados y estatales, específicamente en el caso de la NASA, y que esos intereses no son ocultos, son dichos, ¿sí? Cuando los astronautas efectivamente llegan a la estación espacial, transmitido a todo el mundo, tanto el director de la NASA como el senador Ted Cruz explicitan que este es el primer paso para colonizar la Luna y Marte. Hablan estrictamente en esos términos, hablan de colonización de esos espacios. Ya Elon Musk había hablado del tema de la colonización y había dicho que le parecía factible colonizar Marte a través de la terraformación, esto es como generar un ambiente posible, vivible, básicamente bombardeando, haciendo explosiones nucleares que generen esa atmósfera, o sea, está hablando de terraformar Marte para eventualmente tener colonias en ese lugar. Y tal vez lo que quiero, para terminar de marcar esa situación específica de ese viaje, es que para una persona como yo, que vive en un país como Argentina, y que que asisto asiduamente a marchas, no puedo dejar de pensar de que en las marchas solemos cantar patria sí, colonia no, o sea, como algo del orden de no queremos ser colonia, entonces tampoco queremos colonizar nada, digamos, hay como algo que está, digo, como intrínsecamente consideramos de que la idea de la colonia es una idea nociva, ¿sí? Pero que entiendo que eso no es así para Estados Unidos, digamos, que ellos tienen una tradición de colonias que es parte constitutiva de su identidad, lo cual es un problema, ¿no? Porque son un poco los dueños del mundo en este momento. Entonces, por un lado me interesa pensar la idea de este viaje, como de pronto salimos o salen a colonizar el espacio exterior, literalmente para armar colonias, mientras el espacio que habitamos está en conflicto totalmente, racial, medioambiental, ecológico, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Entonces eso sería como una parte del asunto, y la otra es y creo que podemos hacerlo juntos, digamos, es como pensar esto juntas. Voy a compartir pantalla de nuevo para ver unos segundos del video que me interesa pensar qué pasa de nuevo en este viaje con el cuerpo, ¿sí? Entonces, comparto pantalla. Lo primero que me interesa en relación a la imagen del viaje en sí es lo lejos que estaba de mi imaginación que la estación espacial tuviera este grado de desprolijidad. Eso, número uno, me parecía como, en mi cabeza, la estación espacial era como medio la nave para, no sé, de Covenant o de Alien 4, digamos, así como era otra cosa. No me imaginaba que todo esto era así. Y por otro lado, en relación a Crew Dragon, es como, nada, que parecía más que una cápsula espacial, parecía como literalmente como un avión con viajeros de en primera clase, ¿no? Como esta idea de que ninguna de las dos imágenes se adaptaba a lo que yo pensaba que debían ser las cosas, ¿sí? Como tenía otras imágenes construidas. Me gusta mucho este dinosaurio acá, que está flotando, como una especie de recordatorio de otra vida, ¿sí? Y a nivel de la cuestión más técnica, me llamó mucho la atención que adentro de la nave espacial tuvieran adelanto de nuevo acá, todo este sistema de registro de la entrada, ¿sí? Como esta manera estaba siendo transmitida a todo el mundo, y me parecía como todavía como precaria, como seguían trabajando con cámaras, son como unas cámaras reflex como las que se usan acá, usan flashes, es como una cosa como de una cuestión tecnológica que yo pensaba que era como mucho más avanzada, y es como mucho menos avanzada. Y de hecho usan esto que en cine usamos un montón, que se llaman brazos mágicos. Son como unas pequeñas herramientas. O sea, todo el viaje era mucho más precario de lo que yo me imaginaba. Así como que la tecnología no era tan de avanzada. Así como en algún punto decía, esto es todo más cercano, así como todo más posible. And then the moment that I'm really interested is when the astronaut entered, the second one.
I've watched it. Yeah, it's very. I didn't. Yeah, I
Y
watched it when you sent it.
es como, no, yo no estaba como, pensaba, ¿qué pensará él? ¿No? O sea, él realmente sintió que algo estaba pasando, pero visualmente no se constataba de que estuviera sangrando. I think he feels like he was bleeding, but he was not bleeding.
I'm not sure how it works in also imponderability.
Yes,
I don't know what is but
yes, that's what the point. Maybe we don't bleed in the space. I don't know what I don't know.
No, but maybe it's not visible. I don't know, because then he takes this napkin, right, and he holds it for quite a bit, and he keeps looking. I don't want to anticipate what's going to happen, but.
And I think pensé como qué raro que tengan tissues ahí, digamos, es como me pareció un espacio muy extraño. Pensé que podía ser como afuera de mi casa realmente, o sea, como no entendía cómo era que eso estaba pasando, pero sobre todo me hizo de nuevo pensar en el cuerpo, ¿no? En la forma en la que el cuerpo es instalado, puesto en un lugar, me tengo que agarrar para no flotar, para que mi cuerpo no pierda su forma eventualmente, y lo necesario que era para ellos, que estaban siendo vistos por todo el planeta, mantener la forma del cuerpo, ¿sí? Porque esto es una apuesta for the cameras. It's a gesture for the cameras. They are waiting the cameras. So, and again, this como we have a body. Even in another space, we have a body, and we have to handle with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to know, what do you think about all the stuff?
Yeah.
That journey.
No, it's very nice. I just wanted to say that I didn't watch the whole endeavor. I am less and less interested in the general image of North American everything. I just don't. I let's say that I feel that through a very long and sustained kind of propaganda, the US has also managed to make a standard out of itself. When I speak about the US, I'm talking about the states, right? The whole construction that is the United States, with this prison, military, entertainment, industrial complex, let's say. So I'm not talking about people. I have great friends, and I respect many people that come from there. But in terms of politics, I think it has, through propaganda, has made itself into a standard, so that everybody looks up to the US, or a lot of people still look up to the US. And I think they actually set a very low standard for a lot of things. Also for activism, to be honest. I feel like they set such a low standard. Yes, people are killed in the street in the US. Yes, there are mass shootings in schools. Why should we look to the US as a standard? So I'm trying to, part of which of course it means that there's always need for solidarity with people that are struggling. Also the whole protest wave now after the killing of George Floyd. But at the same time, I also feel like I don't want to center so much on the United States anymore. There's a Senegalese economist, Felwine Sarr, that I'm following, and I think they have, coming from Africa, I think it's interesting. If you really want to be decolonial, I think it's interesting to also look at things that emerge from other places, not necessarily the US. That's the first, the first thing. So I didn't really watch anything that had to do with SpaceX and the partnership with NASA. Though I did see then also the Starlink launch of the satellites. And then of course I read, or I saw some tweets about it. I think, of course, it marks this new state private public partnership. I don't think the state, this is the thing, because NASA has been defunded, has been constantly defunded. So of course they needed to they needed some private money to be able, and actually what they achieved, it's also very little, because what they were able to make were trips to the outer space that do not fly from Baikonur. Baikonur, which is this cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, was actually the only place from which manned missions could be sent into space. And I think it was just a matter of PR, really, for the US. And then for Elon Musk, of course, it's just a very good business opportunity. But in terms of technological achievement, there's zero technological achievement. It's you just do what other people have been doing anyway, but with a private partnership. And of course, this signals something also in terms of opening up again and going towards more privatization in terms of also what the outer space means, who has access there. I think, to be honest, if I were to speculate on what can be done in outer space in the near future, it's mostly probably asteroid mining. So it's mostly some form of mining. In terms of setting up colonies, and, you know, I think this is such a toxic fiction that is also used to draw resources and money into for very different purposes. We are not even, and why the fact that it happened indeed right after the murder of George Floyd in the US and this wave of protests, it was a very, you know, Jill Scott Heron moment. He has this Whitey on the Moon, where of course it felt like a total, like such a horrible, blatant act of disregard, you know, where you don't really care what happens on the planet, but you want to show that you are able to fly to outer space. But that means something. It also means that, you know, these people, because in the end there are some people making these decisions, pursuing some form of goals, that they do not care about ruin. Because I think the situation with the Earth now is not just that it's in chaos, it's increasingly ruined. So I think also this use of the term colonize as if it were something good in popular culture, there hasn't been really, maybe except for Avatar, I feel like there hasn't really been, you know, something that turns, or like that performs a critique of this term. So you still hear this idea of colonizing, space colonization. It's still imagined in this sense where you come as a human on a barren land. There's nothing there, and you colonize. When you colonize, you create a colony. I think it also comes maybe from biology or nature, but of course it's completely voided of its historical and political meanings, which of course says a lot about these enterprises. But just to be honest, I really feel like we're so far. I mean, we're not able to grow food anymore, really, in a sustainable way on Earth, on a planet that had all conditions for life, right? This was it. We really, we had it all here somehow. This idea that you could even, that you would produce a colony which would be a place in which you would want to live, you know, on Mars, which has, you know, it's not Earth, right? So we ruined, and we are increasingly ruined even this planet, which has all conditions for life. And I think that this fantasy that we should now put resources into escaping to somewhere else or producing, I mean, it's not gonna, I don't even think it's about space tourism. I think it's all bullshit, to be honest. Sometimes I just feel this is all a fantasy. It's a nice story that you tell to governments or to investors or to people who put money into these enterprises. Because not even on a short term, but on a long term, I think we will be long extinct by the time we would be able to actually produce a livable environment in outer space on Mars and terraform Mars. Just to be clear, I don't think we even we coped with the effects, or we are not able to understand the effects of our terraforming of the earth. We are still thinking in this very we think the world still as parts in this mechanicist image of the world. So I still think that we're not really engaging. When I say we, I don't know, I guess I mean people in positions of power who are able to drive political decisions at a larger scale. I don't think we understand ecology. I don't think we understand the entangled, connected nature of everything. So I don't think we understand how we've acted in the world until now. And the fact that, especially through this idea of colonizing Mars with SpaceX, that you're ready to act in the world, on another world, in the same way, is just, I think it's just, I'm sorry, it's just idiotic. I feel like there's all this idiocy, really, I'm sorry, but I can't call it something else, that is pumped and wrapped into this marvelous fantasy of escape, because in the end, it is about escape. It is about evading whatever you leave here, which you also cannot escape. So yeah, I feel that it was such a waste, but it was also a very, very, very good testimony to the politics of this space, of the United States also, as it is governed right now, and as it will be probably governed in the future. I'm not very hopeful. Yeah, no matter what the results on this election will be. So I feel like to look for something hopeful and truly advanced, also in terms of technology, I really think there's a lot of work to be done before going to space. Because as you said before, in the historical context and the ideological framework somehow sets what can actually happen there. And for the moment, nothing good can happen in space either, I think.
Creo que nada que se piense literalmente como una colonización puede ser bueno en esos términos, digamos, o sea, como siempre estuvo asociado como exploration first, colonization then. So, es difícil repito, este país fue una colonia, was a colony from Spain, y hasta al día de hoy, till this day, we think in our meetings, homeland, yes, not colony. So for us, it's so hard to hear we are going to make a colony up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to, I completely, agree. And I think in general, I come also from, I come from Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe, Romania. We have never really been, I mean, we have been a colony in many ways, but I'm not sure that we are referred to as such many times. But so I can completely understand. I think also using this word with such ease is a prerogative of people who come from places that have colonized, actually, and have not been colonized, well, let's say most of the time, because of course we can assume there are people who are unaware of what they are part of everywhere. I just wanted to say a couple of things about because I realized I didn't respond to this, the question of the body, when you said that we have a body even in space. And actually that is a very beautiful, like those couple of minutes where this astronaut keeps going with, I mean, I also thought he will stop at some point, but he also almost becomes obsessed with this, and you can't see anything. And that makes it even more interesting, that this gesture where like for a couple of minutes, he still just like goes back to his head. I think that somehow that whole sequence speaks very well, I guess, of everything that you mentioned. And for me, it's obvious that we always and will always have a body. We are determined by this body. Everything we do, no matter how discursive, no matter how intellectual, you're always embodied. And embodied intelligence will always also design and make out of our extensions. So that everything comes back one way or another to our embodied experience of the world, what we make of the world through the wholeness of this body, and how we reflect it, or the technology that we make. I think it's very much informed by our embodied experience. It is inevitably informed by that. So yeah, I think this is also something that yeah, this kind of a transhumanist fantasies of also escaping to outer space are also very much, if we speak about Musk, it's also a lot about escaping the body. And I think there's a lot of also science fiction that also comes from North America that is very much, again, about these possibilities to put yourself in a sphere. You know, I don't know if you watched Westworld, so, but there are a lot of examples where, of course, there is some critique of that, but it's very, I think it's very soft and diluted. But most of the time, what the dominant image is that you are your mind and your consciousness, and this consciousness is something that you can just upload to the cloud, which is, I mean, this is such a, I don't even know what to call it. I think it follows also this very outdated Cartesian dualism, and then probably mechanicist, biodeterministic. It's, you know, it sees cognition as separated from the body. It's also so outdated. It's wrong. I think it's completely wrong. But the creative industries, they keep producing also, and film, they keep producing also this fiction that it is possible for humans to escape their body, which makes no sense, because your material embodiment determines what you are. There's no idealist reading of a person. Right? So I don't believe in idealism anyway. I believe in a kind of complicated materialism that is intelligent, and of course is also in a relation with higher orders of abstraction and so on. But yeah, I think this is also something that needs to be dealt with and accepted and embedded then into political thinking and technological thinking, the fact that you cannot escape your body. And you shouldn't want to. This also comes from such from a tradition of also a church dogma tradition, I think, the separation between spirit and flesh, where the flesh was seen as feminine, and, you know, women were mostly associated with the sensuous and the flesh, and then spirit were men who somehow they were able to transcend their bodies and achieve this objective, disembodied point of observation. Of spirituality and then of observation in science. So that there's a continuation, I feel, in this lineage of pretense of objectivity and dualism between the body and the spirit. There's a continuation between let's say Christian church, at least, or this is at least what I've been more familiar with, and 17th century, let's say, scientific revolution. So I think we have a lot of work to do to dismantle these. It's not even a residual knowledge. It's very much embedded into everything that we make.
Creo que usas una palabra en inglés que para mí es como muy llamativa, pregnante, que es embodiment. En español es encarnación, que tiene que ver con, o sea, como que ese tener cuerpo es tener carne, to have a flesh.
Yeah. In Romanian is încarnare.
Encarnare.
So
and for me, there's I love the word. It's like an attractor for me. I don't know why, but it's like an attractor. Maybe because I work with images which are not embodiment. the two-dimensional images are not embodiment. And in this time of coronavirus, images, two-dimensional images, are coming to life, in a way of life. And the first 2 weeks, I was full day connected to my computer, working, and I really felt my neurons doing. Really, I swear to you, and my eyes was, and I have someone is announcing his work. So I really think in the first 2 weeks, or maybe the first month, that maybe it was a way to images to become embodiment, like they appear so powerful, like a shot, no? You know, it was, everything is imaged in 2D. So this take me directly to the telepathic sessions, because what it looks to me is what hits me was when you said moving in different places at the same time with no proof of present, Photography is the proof of present. It's like, what happened to you? You don't want I work anymore. With no proof of present and no need to visualize each other as 2D images. No live stream, no Zoom, no recording. For me it was, wow, this is a statement.
But maybe I don't think it was meant, and I don't think you should take it in a, I mean, as that. I understand that being an artist who works with images might make this feel a bit strange, like directed towards your particular practice, but I think it was really.
I love it. I think this wow, it's like, wow,
okay.
That could be possible. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think maybe first to start a little bit with images. I think, of course, they're not embodied, but they are always embedded, or they have a material. They always have material support. There's never, I mean, even when you imagine something, it's still, there's materiality everywhere. And then I think for this telepathic movement practice, which is inspired by many things, and it was not, it's not really a work, it was a practice that I proposed together with some friends. I think in the very first weeks also, when everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people went into this lockdown mode and you couldn't move so much, there was such also an immediate reaction from mostly, let's say, the cultural sphere to keep going. So everything moved online, and everyone started, I have an artist friend who I think said that this is like the Black Friday of contemporary art, so everyone was just like, boom, watch this, we're live streaming this is now online, virtual viewing rooms. And it felt like this immediate translation of so many other mediums into the medium of the image, in the end, of two-dimensional images, was not, I mean, it was not really a reaction that came out of a concern for art or culture, or even people who would experience this new forms and new, this content, though I hate the word content, but this thing in a new medium. But it was rather, a business, an economic imperative, because nobody was allowed to stop, actually. So this machinery, this productivist, neoliberal productivist machinery that cannot stop no matter what happens, created, of course, this panic, because everybody, the fact that everyone cannot stop, or like 99%, let's say, of the world cannot stop for 2 months, means something. It means you are either in the state of precarity where nobody can afford not to work for 2 months, no institution can afford not to put something out for 2 months, they lose funding, they lose their patrons' donations, So this actually says something about the world, like the state of ruin and of complete madness in which the world is, I think. Sorry, I have a very, I'm really not optimistic about where we're heading. So maybe I don't want to be too harsh with this, but I can't help it. And I think this practice was more a reaction to this immediate overflood of images, which we already have I think throughout history we've already privileged vision as a sensory as a perceptual possibility over many other senses, and somehow images are also, they're proliferating at a rate and at a scale that somehow affords no competition. So we already live in a world that is full of screens and full of images, that is very quick to translate everything into an image. And I felt like that it's good to maybe produce a space of mystery also, or a space of imagination. I feel sometimes, for example, that representation, a direct image representation also flattens or somehow impedes sometimes the possibility to imagine on something. It's almost like it's overrepresented. This is also why I think the medium of writing or of text is very interesting sometimes. Reading a book, this is why it's different from a movie, because you can imagine, you actually leave space, you leave the representation space more open for you to imagine maybe even ambiguous or contradictory things. So I feel like the space of non-image sometimes, but which can still be visual. I don't know how to explain. I just feel like that there's something quite fertile and that offers a lot of possibility in also not representing all the time, or misrepresenting even, which is also what I think part of my artistic practice is also about. So embodiment is also, it is never about an illustration. We were talking about it. So I felt that maybe proposing something that you do, it's very easy. I think actually that also more people did it, but they did it also with maybe with some visual representation. Some people also did it with sound and music. So you basically just create a context where you agree that at a certain time, on a certain date, you do something together. And you don't need to see each other. And in that way, I think not having an image was also about, you know, not making it all about, oh, we're going to post now on Instagram, us moving, or you become concerned with how you're being seen and what you produce. So we wanted not to have that sort of concern. And I think it opened up the space for imagining and projecting all sorts of things, which is good. I think it was good and helpful. Yeah, I think different people took it in different ways. So just for maybe for clarity, for someone who is watching this and has no, maybe no understanding of what we were exactly talking about. So there was this proposal that we do a telepathic movement practice where we gather, whoever wants to join can simply join. We announced, it was me and 5 other people or 4, and we announced that we're going to move, dance together at a certain time, at a certain date, and then anybody could join. And actually, I think that from messages that we got afterwards, a lot of people were joining. It's just we didn't want to collect or to archive or to have some form of representation of attendance also, where you would say, leave a message if you want to join, or like, or hit press on this. I was sometimes even annoyed that someone, I think, counted the plays on the music that we had on, because we also had a sound playlist. Yeah, and someone said, oh, we had 300 or 200 plays. I was like, why did you say the number? I don't want to know the number. And I think there was also a reaction to, again, this need to quantify, you know, to make value quantifiable, where the value of something rests in the number of people attending also, or, you know, I think the value of something, to be honest, your account of the work that you saw in Münster, for me, makes it valuable by default. I wouldn't need, you know, if someone speaks like this about an artwork, I would say, that artwork had its purpose in the world. If only if one people saw it, and it, you know, if that one person actually got this from the artwork, I think it's enough. You know, I don't need numbers. And of course, that was one of the situations where a lot of people actually saw that one. So I'm not talking from a position where, let's say, I do work that nobody sees and I just want it to be anyway appreciated. It's not about that. I just think that, and this is also something that was made very manifest with the coronavirus, that we have come, or let's just speak about the art world, but it's a general observation that value and the creation of the systems of valuations are very much dependent on quality, or on quantity, not quality, on numbers. You know, how many people attended, how many likes do you have, how popularity is also very much understood in these terms. And I wanted to avoid even worrying or being concerned with that. And I think, talking about the coronavirus, this is also why a lot of institutions are facing a lot of problems today when we speak about live performance or even exhibitions and so on. It's not because exhibitions cannot be attended during these difficult times. It's because you cannot attend exhibitions in a mass. You cannot have mass openings. You cannot have mass events anymore. I'm still being asked, you know, how is the pandemic changing my practice? It's not really changing my practice. I think it's just because I make works that should be the same for when there's 2 people in the room or when there's a large crowd outside. But the crowd is not determined by my work. It's determined by an economy of the arts and of everything that rests on getting masses of people together and counting numbers and saying, we had 4,000 visitors, we sold I don't know how many tickets, and we had I don't know how many million views. It doesn't matter for how long people watch something. It doesn't matter, because you can't quantify that really, the impact on human subjectivity. What you can quantify is really clicks and butts on seats and bodies through the door. And I think this produces the economic problem that also the arts faces today. They cannot offer the same numbers. It's all anyway in this situation where I feel like the arts and the humanities constantly now have to justify themselves a bit to the politics. What is the use, you know? The use is that you don't become completely stupid. I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, you know, that like there's this whole obsession with STEM curriculum. All the money goes to science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Whatever makes that, what is the framework for that doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, I feel like there has to be a pushback, a refusal to value yourself when you're part of the cultural sector and of the arts in these terms, in this you know, easily computable parameters. And of course, it's not always possible. And of course, there will always be a compromise. And of course, it doesn't matter that none of this is useful. But I felt like, especially during the first couple of weeks with the lockdown, that and also nobody could really watch anything online anymore, or at least from a lot of people that I was talking to, they were like, we're asking, did you watch this? And they're like, no. No, I can't watch anything anymore. Like there is a screen fatigue. I mean, again, because the image is, the support is this 2-dimensional thing. It focuses your gaze in a certain way. You don't see depth, you don't perceive depth. So you sit like this. No matter how you sit, you still have to have a relationship to a screen. So the time that people were asked to spend on 2-dimensional images in that particular moment, I thought was very much related to a politics of desperation in the culture sector. And yeah, I think the proposal was really just to, there is a way to be together that rests or depends on your capacity to imagine also. And it was very nice. Like, so I mean, I think people were imagining different things. that you are in contact with someone across the continent, and that you can visualize, or you can visualize all sorts of connections between spaces at that point that maybe are more enriching for you and for a sense of community than seeing yourselves on a screen all the time. So it was just creating a counterpoint, not refusing, because of course I was also doing Zoom meetings and all online talks, and I actually appreciate the possibility that this opens. People from different parts of the world can follow and attend. So it's not about a complete refusal, but I thought you need some other space to imagine community and connection that is not always translated through presence, like a proof of presence, but proof of presence also understood in this economic, quantifiable way.
Una última pregunta y te juro que te dejamos.
No, it's very nice, don't worry. Very nice.
Pero que no puedo no hacértela porque realmente me interesa mucho saber qué te imaginas cuando hablas de el reencantamiento del mundo. ¿Qué te imaginas?
Re-encantamiento, just to make sure, it means re-enchantment, right?
Yes.
Re-enchantment. It's a very interesting question. I think I was recently I'm reading different things. I think I recently came across a term that was not enchantment, but enlivenment. Because in re-enchantment, somehow, if we think about the Enlightenment as a form of disenchantment, or the modernity as a form of disenchantment of the world, where you also maybe you move away from a particular relationship to nature, which I think was fertile, but also not always desirable. I don't know. I try not to romanticize pre-modernity either, right? I think women's rights, gender studies, there are many things that actually modernity was good for. So what I try to avoid in general, and this is actually hard, is thinking in bulk, where you bulk, like you just take a whole thing, a whole concept, and throw it, flush it down the toilet. It's maybe what you would say in English. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So being able to separate and say, this was actually good, this was terrible, this actually maybe. I think being able to do this work is also very important for current day politics. I come again from a former communist socialist background or world, let's say. And I'm having a lot of problems with trying to re-enchant socialism and even communism. If you go back in history and it's a complicated task, but I think being able to separate things and not to take concepts as meaning one thing and throw them away in the bin is really important. It's the same, I think, with modernity, because there's a quite, of course, prominent direction of criticizing modernity and white Western modernity. And of course, there were all sorts of modernities. And I think to a certain degree, the disenchantment of the world also, we benefited from that. There are some benefits, and it has to do, of course, with science, with medicine, with health, with all sorts of rights, and a different kind of society that could be progressist. And it's all a question of politics. So instead of re-enchantment, I think I prefer, because enchantment also, I guess, to a certain sense implies maybe a certain obscurity or a certain mystery, which is both good but could also be bad. So I think I would prefer an enlivenment. Also, instead of enlightenment, maybe an enlivenment, where you don't see yourself as separated from your surroundings, and you don't see nature as you don't see matter as inactive and dead, and you don't see everything else as a resource, human resource, natural resource. So okay, you could see, but a resource for what? You know, so I think enlivenment maybe doesn't necessarily reproject some sort of romanticizing of pre-modernity, but it, I don't know how to even, because I also don't want to reproduce this linear perception of history, right? So it's not a move forward. It's a bifurcation maybe. I think it should contain a certain form of re-enchantment. Enchantment maybe in the sense where you let yourself again become sensible to the world around you in a poetic way. And this is also something that I think is super important, that you are able to look at the world not only as resource, but as something to be enchanted. I mean, not enchanted, maybe now I'm using the wrong word, but to be mesmerized by, to appreciate, to be nurtured by, also in a poetic, so not in a direct, food, in a poetic way. So in that sense, maybe re-enchantment is actually a good word, in the sense that you let yourself be, impressed also by the poetry of your surroundings.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
No, the pleasure is mine. It was also a wonderful conversation, and thank you for such thoughtful entry points into the discussion. It was really great, and I hope we are able to meet in person very soon.
Yes,
I would take the boat to Argentina.
Me too.
Anytime. Yeah, I'd love to.